Okay, welcome everybody. It's good to be back, and yeah, I'm because of this injury I've had with my back, I'm really focusing on structural integrity. I mean, I always do focus on the balance of stretching and releasing and opening versus structural integrity, but I think in my own personal journey and story, because I'm naturally quite flexible, I've really got into the opening, and I perhaps haven't done quite enough of the structural integrity so that you can open from a safe place. And I think that's what's going on in my back now. I have a very physical life, is that it's being revealed to me that there's a bit of an imbalance, and I need to, get a bit more aware of this kind of core structural integrity of the pelvic area. So we're going to be focusing on that, but in a particular way. And I'm going to call this class Drawing into the Midline, because a lot of when we're working with intelligence, it's really about centering and connecting to these deep central muscles. But also, of course, so on the physical, we're drawing into the center line. But I'm also kind of just with our focus. So there's this word pratyahara, which means sense withdrawal. So rather than being out there with our sensory awareness, we're really drawing everything internally. And from that place of inner awareness, we're less likely to injure ourselves as well. So we're going to work a lot with adduction, which means bringing to the center line, rather than abduction, which is away, particularly with the legs and working with these deep core muscles. But let's just start seated, and we'll do a bit more of the kind of pratyahara, drawing everything to the center line. So just get yourself comfortable for a moment, and we'll start with just a little bit of a tuning in with a pratyahara focus and a little bit of pranayama, and then we'll get into asana work. So just as you sit here, just get comfortable, and then maybe free up the shoulders, do whatever you need to do, but then have a sense of consciously closing the eyes. So just being aware that as we go around our world with the eyes open and we're externally focused, so just kind of as your first conscious act of pratyahara, sense withdrawal, just close the eyes, and immediately our focus becomes internal or more internal. We're not, our attention isn't drawn by external visual stimuli. So just for a moment, if you can kind of feel it, draw your eyes towards each other and up slightly towards a classic kind of focal point of meditation, which is the space between the eyebrows. If that strains your eye muscles, you don't need to do that. But if you can physically do it, it's even better. But kind of have some kind of sense on focusing on the space between the eyebrows, the center of the forehead, the seat of the third eye, chakra, Ajna chakra, and the seat of our internal space, Chiddakasha, means inner space. And just be aware, notice that even though the eyes are closed, we're still looking, but in a very open, diffuse way that's not expecting to see anything. We're not on high alert like we are as we move around our daily life, eyes open. We're just kind of open and receptive to what might manifest in this focal point, and it might be nothing. It might be that your sense of darkness changes and you start to see colours, or kind of almost pixelated darkness, or even shapes or moving colours, or sometimes people see whole sentences and words. Everybody's different, but we're not expecting to see anything at all, but we just open to Chiddakasha. This is a great way to begin to withdraw the senses internally. And then become aware of your breath, another way to bring our awareness internally. Just become acutely aware of your breath, and as you do so, start to alter the breath slightly by extending the inhales and exhales, breathing through the nose if you can, keeping the shoulders relaxed. So you might hear the sound of your breath. You might feel the breath moving your body, the stomach, the rib cage, the shoulders, expanding as you inhale, contracting as you exhale. You might feel the cool air in the nostrils as you inhale and the slightly warmer air as you exhale. And next time you inhale, see if you can kind of track that inhale as far internally, as far into the body as possible, so you'll feel it in the nostrils. And see if you can feel it sliding down the back of the throat and even deeper into the body, perhaps, eventually into the lungs. Noticing how this matches the movement in the body. And the same as you exhale. So tracking the breath in and out of the body. And just become acutely aware of everything that's always going on inside of ourselves as we walk around in our external lives. But now we just really watch it, become aware of it, connect with it, acknowledge, maybe even feel grateful for all these processes happening. I'm just going to do a couple of pranayama techniques, well, a kriya and a pranayama kriya as a cleansing technique. So just when you're ready, you can keep the eyes closed. If you can follow my directions with the eyes closed, great. If you need to open them, don't worry, that's fine. But we'll start with Kapalabhati, the skull shining breath. This is a kriya, but it's great for clearing the chitta-kasha, clearing the mind, which is what we want to start the class with. So if you know the practice, just go into it in your own time. Those who need a bit of a guide, we're doing the belly pump. We're drawing in the deep abdominals sharply to push the nose out to push the breath out of the nose on the exhale. So it's all about the exhale. You don't need to worry about the inhale. The inhale takes care of itself, and it's all happening with this pumping the belly. So I'll just show you. So nothing moves except the belly, and as we draw everything in, that has a mechanical way, or it pushes the air out the nostrils. Okay, and then the inhale takes care of itself. Go at your own pace. You don't need to follow my pace if I go too fast for you. And we'll just do 2 rounds, maybe 30 seconds of each. If you're already going, that's fine. Just keep going, take a break if you need. But otherwise, moving into our first round. And release the technique, let the belly relax. In between rounds, do close the eyes if you open them. And again, return your inner gaze to chitta-kasha, space between the eyebrows. Again, just observing. No expectation. Make sure the belly's relaxed. Breathe into the belly, a couple of deep breaths into the belly. All the way up to the chest. Go into another round. Just make sure only the belly moves. Try not to move the shoulders. And relax. Just let the belly go. Well done, everyone. Don't worry if you can't yet connect to these muscles and the whole body's jerking around, and it takes time. So just do the best you can. Again, just take some deep belly breaths, returning your inner gaze to chitta-kasha. Relax the belly. Probably if you're doing the technique properly, you'll feel the belly muscles. Okay, and then we're doing a bit of a pranayama buffet. We'll do 3 techniques actually. We'll just do 3 rounds of Brahmari breath, the B breath, because it's another one that's really good for it's really good for pratyahara. If you want, you can just stick your fingers or thumbs in the ear, but there is a mudra called pratyahara mudra, which is symbolic of withdrawing the senses. So if you want to do that, once you've stuck your fingers in the ear, you're not going to be able to hear me. So just keep your fingers out, and if you know what you're doing, again, start yourself, but otherwise just keep your fingers out till I finish the instructions. Okay, so your first finger's on the inner eyebrows, your middle finger is just touching the inner eyes, your fourth finger is touching the outer nostrils without closing them off, and your little finger is touching the outer lips. So we're kind of closing off the sensory organs one by one, and then the final one is sticking your thumbs firmly in the ear. Don't do it just yet. When you stuck your thumbs in the ear, you're going to 3 times take a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, you just hum all the way out to the end of the exhale. Big breath in, out, hum, and you should feel this is an internal vibration. Okay, so if you're not already going, off you go. Just do 3 rounds. You finished, you're still going, you're not going to hear me. Okay, everybody's finished, great. So when you finish, just keep the eyes closed and just feel the effects of that practice. Very profoundly brings us internal and can be very calming. Okay, so we'll just put all that together. We'll just do 5 rounds of, it's like we've done this pranayama, now we're just going to direct the energy, but we're going to work with the spine, because the spine, if we're drawing to the center line, the spine is the physical center line of the body. So just for a moment, close the eyes again and just really focus on your spine. You know, imagining the base of the spine, the tailbone connecting with the floor. Just kind of visualizing this beautiful sinuous kind of S-shaped curve of the vertebra all the way up the back of the neck, just finishing where it supports the cranium. And we're going to breathe up and down the spine just to close this pranayama practice. So we'll do 6 rounds actually, and we'll change it halfway through. So next time you inhale, it's like we're going to inhale from the tailbone up to where the spine meets the skull. So just breathe your breath up the spine. It's like a visualization, like an elevator going up, and as you exhale, it's coming down from just the base of the skull, down the spine, finishing at the end of the tailbone. Inhaling, tailbone up the spine, so we're following the center line of the body. We're internal up to the crown, or sorry, the skull, base of the skull. Exhaling from the top of the spine back down to the tailbone. So it's like we're sliding our awareness up and down in the midline of the body. 1 more round in your own time. Inhaling up the spine, an elevator going up and down. And at the end of the exhale, you finish at the tailbone. I'm going to do 3 more rounds. And this time it's going to be the opposite way around. So begin with your awareness at the top of the spine, where it supports the skull. And as you inhale, imagine the breath is traveling from the top of the spine down to the bottom of the spine, like drawing down, being sucked down. And as you exhale, it's being pushed back up from the tailbone all the way up to the top of the spine. Let's do that 2 more times. Inhale, like there's a magnetic draw. The prana moves down from the top of the spine to the bottom. And as you exhale, the energy moves up the spine, finishing at the top of the spine. Inhaling, top to bottom. Exhaling, bottom to top. Notice which one you connected with more easily. No right or wrong, just a curious observation. And now our awareness should be much more internal than when we began the class. So when you're ready, we're going to come onto our backs. And for this class, I meant to say, you're going to need a block. Something like a yoga brick is ideal. If anybody doesn't have one, just give me a wave now. That's going to change things, but we can still do it. Great. You can use a book if you don't have a block at home. And you can also do it without, but it is going to make a difference. Okay, so just come onto your back and just, when you're ready, just stretch the legs up into the air. So we've been seated for a while, but as you do that, take your block, slide it between the thighs, somewhere above the knees that feels kind of comfortable. And you can stretch the arms overhead or have them by the hips, but just start to squeeze the block with the thighs. So as we squeeze the block with the inner thighs, we are adducting. We're using the adductor muscles, which are on the inner thighs. And these muscles are very weak in many of us. When we utilize these muscles and strengthen them, we connect to our deep core muscles as part of our kind of suite of deep core structural muscles. And we open the sacral area of the lower back. So this is the kind of dual physical focus points for today's practice. So just keep squeezing, one more breath. And then you can bend the knees, keep the block between the thighs, and you can take the arms either out in line with the shoulders, the palms down, or elbows in line with the shoulders and cactus arms, so right angle at the elbows, palms up. Okay, so whichever is better for your shoulders. Squeeze the block, and at the same time, kind of draw up on your pelvic floor. When we do these two actions, you can flex the feet as well. We are switching on our deep transverse abdominals. You might start to feel this in the lower belly, somewhere just above your pubic bone. Whether you can feel it or not, just be assured these muscles are working here if we're squeezing and kind of drawing up on the pelvic floor. And then take a big breath in at the center. And as you exhale, take the knees over to the right, not so far that you can't bring yourself back up with your core awareness. So we're going to inhale, come back to the center, exhale, knees to the left. Try to keep the upper back glued to the floor. So we're just twisting in the lower body. So keep this going. The exhale takes you out to the side. We're trying to keep squeezing the block all the way through. You might need to just have a little micro break every now and then, but try to keep awareness of adduction. Try to keep the feet flexed and try not to just swing the limbs around with momentum. We're moving slowly, controlled movements, and we're not going so far that we can't use our deep core muscles to bring ourselves back up. So we're really adducting to help switch on deep core muscles, deep transverse abdominals. If this is very easy for you, you can do this with straight legs as well. It's much more hard, especially hard to keep the upper back glued to the floor with straight legs. But this is an option. Okay, so as the knees or feet come over to one side, the opposite shoulder blade is trying to press down. We're trying not to lift the upper back off the floor. And then next time you come back up from the left, just bend the knees again, release the block. Maybe just give yourself a hug here. As you hug yourself, kind of, even though there's no block now, still squeeze the inner thighs together. This is really going to be our theme. And we're going to build up to some peak poses, which are actually going to be back bends, because when we come into big opening postures from this place of structure and integrity, we often get a much deeper opening. So they work together. The more strong and stable we get, the more we can open. Okay, and then when you're ready, roll to one side and bring yourself up to tabletop. So hands underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. If you've got wrist issues, you could try taking your hands a little bit further forward of the shoulders. So we're going to work with core awareness here. So lift the lower belly. Those muscles we were just activating by adducting. We're going to draw them up towards the spine. We've not got a block between the thighs, but we feel like we have. You're kind of drawing the inner thighs towards each other. And then cat-cow with that level of awareness on. So inhale, looking up, lifting tailbone, exhale, and really focus especially on the cat, squeezing this imaginary block between the thighs and lifting up on the core. And just keep that going. So particularly lingering on the cat today. Bring the chin to the chest. And then after your next cat, squeezing that imaginary block, come back to a neutral spine. And again, lift that lowest part of the belly up, push, draw up on the pelvic floor, and then lift up the right leg behind you and lift the left arm out in front of you, coming into the diagonal stretch here. Try not to collapse in the lower belly. Try and keep drawing it up away from that gravitational pull. Breathe fully, and exhale, release. Okay, and then when you're ready, we'll go to the other side. So again, start by drawing up that lower belly, drawing up on the pelvic floor. Stretch the left leg out behind you and reach the right arm forward. And the other thing we want to be focusing on here is internal rotation of the back leg. This is also linked to adduction. It's not adduction, but we're lengthening the inner seam of the leg, which is where the adductor muscles are. It's like we're pushing through the inner heel to extend and lengthen the inner seam of the leg. And exhale, release. Great, well done. So have your block handy. So we're going to come up to downward dog with a block. In fact, we could put it in now before we come up. So in tabletop, just slide the block between the thighs. You'll find you'll need your feet a little bit closer than normal. Tuck the toes, lift the hips. And again, squeeze that block. You're going to kind of get used to this theme. This is the theme of the class. So really squeeze. And there's two things we could also, we're aware of the thigh muscles perhaps starting to fatigue. Maybe again, you can feel how when we switch on the inner thigh muscles, we also switch on those lowest portion of the deep abdominals. But you might also detect with our pratyahara, our internal awareness, a kind of opening feeling in the lowest part of the back, the sacrum. Because these things are all happening, whether we can feel it or not. Just look at your feet, check the outer edges of the feet are parallel. Take one more deep breath. And then we're going to come forward to plank. If you need to, bring the knees down, and if you need to, come onto the elbows as well. So, but otherwise we're rolling forward. You might need to move the feet backwards a little bit, shoulders over the wrists, or come down to the elbows. Squeeze the block, draw the tailbone down so we're not sticking the bum up. We're kind of drawing it almost the other way, lifting the lowest part of the belly up towards the spine. Take one more deep breath. And exhale back to downward dog. So these kind of static planks will serve us well in our longevity with deep core structural integrity. Relax the neck. I'm just going to do that one more time again. If you need to come to the elbows, if the wrists are sore, do. Otherwise, high on the toes, roll forward to the plank, shoulders over the wrists or shoulders over the elbows. Squeeze the block. Draw the heels back, the crown of the head forward. Lift the lowest portion of the lower belly up towards the spine and draw up on the pelvic floor. Great. And then exhale back, downward dog. Now, see if it's possible to walk the feet to the hands without losing the block. So you kind of have to do a little waddle. You might need to take the hands off the floor, of course. If the block drops, don't worry, just put it between the thighs again, and we come to a standing forward fold. And again, our feet are going to be closer towards each other than normal. They're not going to be able to meet the hips, otherwise we'll lose the block. And we just forward fold here, maybe holding the opposite elbow or letting the arms dangle, back of the neck long, but we're squeezing that block. Check your position of your hips. We want the hips over the ankles, so check you're not hanging back in your heels with the hips behind the ankles or too far into the toes. Just find the place where we feel evenly spread on the soles of the feet. One more breath. Okay, from here, just bring the hands to the hips, bend the knees, sink the hips, and we're coming into a version of Utkatasana, squeezing the block. So we're still squeezing, the hands are forward. You're gonna have a love-hate relationship with this block today, probably. One more breath. And then slowly push through the legs, come up to Tadasana, but try not to lose that adduction. So working with the adduction in Tadasana, it's one of my favorite things to do at the moment. This is what I'm doing most mornings. Interlace your hands behind the back and push the knuckles down towards the floor. You might need to lower the block slightly if you've got long arms. so that you've got space to really push those knuckles down. Draw the tailbone down and squeeze the block and feel like a mountain. This posture is called the mountain pose. When we work like this, adducting, you might have a heightened sense of stability here because we're connecting to our deep internal core muscles. And then release the hands. Okay, so we're going to do 3 rounds of sun salutations. If you need to just have a rest for a moment from the block, because we're just about to put it in again. We're going to do 3 rounds of sun salutations with the block, and then for a while we'll leave the block. Okay, so it is possible, I checked. So standing at the front of the mat in Tadasana, drawing those shoulders back and down, dropping the tailbone, squeeze the block. Inhale, raise the hands and look up. Exhale, hinge, forward fold, drop the head. Inhale, look up and lengthen. This is the only dodgy bit. As we plant the hands, we have to kind of do a little bit of a waddle back to the plank or tabletop. Inhale. As we exhale, we lower down with either knees on or off the floor. Inhale, we come to a back bend, and you might need to adapt this slightly because the front of the block might be at the floor. And then exhale back to downward dog. So there's a couple of points where it might just need to be modified slightly. Take a few slow deep breaths in downward dog. Again, squeezing the block, checking the feet are parallel, lifting up the lower portion of the belly. By the way, if anybody practicing with the recording doesn't have a block, you can just be doing this by squeezing the inner thighs towards each other, or anything that's hard, like a book or anything like that. And then at the end of your next exhale, look forward. You can, one way of doing it without losing the block is to jump. I'm just taking care of my back, so I'm not going to jump. So the other way is that kind of slow walk forwards again. Inhale, look up and lengthen. Exhale, fold. Try to squeeze all the way through as best you can, especially as you inhale, transitioning up, arms overhead, and exhale back to Tadasana. As you do those 2 final moves, really squeeze the block. Round number 2, inhale, take it up, squeeze the block. Exhale, forward fold, squeeze the block. Inhale, look up and lengthen. Exhale, take to awkward waddle back to plank or tabletop. Inhale here. Exhale, lower down from tabletop or plank. Inhale, find your back bend. Might need to just modify it slightly, and exhale, downward dog. Again, your feet are going to be slightly closer together than normal. Check the outer edges of the feet are parallel. Relax the neck, squeeze the block. Feel the lower belly switching on. Feel the sacral area opening. These are all happening together, these actions of the body when we squeeze the thighs. One more breath. And at the end of the exhale, look forward, maybe jump, maybe walk. Try not to lose the block. If you do, don't worry, just pick it up, put it back in again. Inhale, look up and lengthen. Exhale, fold. And again, really squeeze the block as you inhale, raise the hands, look up, exhale, Tadasana. Last round. Inhale, up. Exhale, fold. Keep squeezing. Last round, this is inhale, look up, lengthen, squeeze the block. Exhale, maybe try a jump back. The plank or tabletop, inhaling there. Exhale, lowering down, squeeze the block, especially in the transitions. Inhale to a back bend. Exhale, back to downward dog. Last time, squeeze that block. Relax the back of the neck. Breathe deep. And at the end of the exhale, look forward, maybe a jump, maybe that little kind of tiptoe. Inhale, look up, squeeze. Exhale, fold, squeeze. And really squeeze the thighs as you inhale all the way up. Feel how that supports you as you come up. And exhale, Tadasana. Take a moment, one more breath. And then probably very happy to release the block at this point. Just keep it nearby and come back to Tadasana. And even though we've not got the block there, just feel like it's still there. See if you can retain that sense of adduction, because this is what we're looking for, to feel that sense of drawing to the midline, even when we're not getting the feedback of the block. It's an energetic This is that energetic, sucking the energy to the center line that gives us great stability in these postures. Okay, so from here, we're going to come into a balance. And I guess we're working with internal rotation of the legs as well. So we're going to just balance on the left leg, and when you're ready, just pick up the right foot and draw the right heel towards the buttock, and take both hands to the front of that foot if you can. If you need to, just hold with one hand and have the left hand on the hip. But the thighs are internally rotating here, which is another way to get the same effect of bringing this structure and integrity back to the pelvis. Try to bring the right knee in line with the left knee, and kind of almost take the hips forward ever so slightly to really open up the front of that thigh. You can stay here for a few more breaths, or take Natarajasana, left arm reaching up in line with the ear, swapping the grip, so you're holding the big toe edge of the right foot, start to push the right foot into the hands, maybe bring the weight forward. But watch what happens. Try not to let the hips stick out, the torso stick out to the right. Try and internally rotate the right leg, so the right hip bone is pointing down, the chest is pointing down. This is our focus here, rather than depth. And then inhale, come back to the center. Maybe just squeeze the heel into the buttock again, making sure the knees are as close to each other as possible. And then exhale, release. Okay, coming to our other side. So focusing on the right foot, the right leg. We'll always be trying to keep the pelvis as stable as possible here. Bending the left leg, picking up the left foot, bringing the heel to the buttock. See if we can then drop the left knee so it's close to the right knee. Take both hands back if you can, and squeeze the inner elbows towards each other. So you're like squeezing a beach ball between the elbows to really open and lift the chest. Stay here, trying to keep the knees together. Or raise the right arm next to the ear, keep it next to the ear, swap the grip so you're holding big toe edge, the top of the foot's resting on the palm. Start to push the left foot into the hand. Just going to draw the left shoulder back and maybe start to make you turn to the left. So try and avoid that by internally rotating the left leg. It might mean you don't go as deep. Try to keep the left hip bone pointing down, the left side of the chest pointing down as best you can. It's going to feel weird. Going to feel like you can't go very far. And then inhale, come back up, squeeze heel to buttock, drop left knee next to right, and release the left foot down. Great. Turn to Tadasana, squeeze your invisible block. Notice it's like we're sucking energy up, drawing it up the center line, out the crown of the head, whilst grounding down. And then when you're ready, turn to the long edge of your mat, a nice wide stance. We're going to see if we can still feel this adduction even in some very open postures. So bring the hands onto the hips, roll the shoulders back, lift the chest, inhale, look up, and just be aware of your feet very firmly rooting down. On your next exhale, hinge at the hips and take yourself into Prasarita. So ask wide leg forward fold. When you get to your deepest fold, release the hands to the floor, relax the neck. And then we're going to put our awareness in our legs again. Imagine you have a really wide block between your thighs here that you're squeezing. But as you're squeezing, you don't want the little toe edge of the feet to start to peel off the floor. So it's like at the same time, you're pressing down through the whole of the soles of the feet, especially the little toe edges probably. Lifting the inner arches of the feet and squeezing this invisible, really long block that probably doesn't exist between the upper thighs. But don't let the soles of the feet lose their groundedness. So there's a lot going on. And you may again notice a sense of opening in the lower back, possibly. Don't worry if you don't, but just be assured it's happening when we use the legs like this. So one more breath. And then inhale, look up, straightening the arms. Exhale, bring the hands to the hips. Really try and squeeze that invisible block as you come all the way up. And notice the legs might feel they've worked a little bit harder than usual. Okay, and then again, we're going to come back into Utkatasana, the chair. We're going to come into classic Utkatasana. If you're close to a wall, it can be interesting to do this against a wall. I've been doing this, so we're going to use the block again, sorry. We will do some nice opening at the end. You don't have to do it by a wall. If you haven't got a wall, you can just do it in the middle of the room. But if you can get to a wall, you're going to place your sacrum and your back against the wall. Your hips, if you're really deep, could be more or less in line with the knees, but probably a little bit above. Your feet are going to be closer together than hip distance, so you can squeeze the block. And then we're going to take the arms up. If you're in the middle of the room, you're just in kind of classic chair position. But here we get, if we're against the wall, we get to kind of neutralize the pelvis. So you push, you're focusing on your sacrum. You're kind of pushing the back of the pelvis and the sacrum into the wall as you squeeze the block. Again, I'm doing this every morning at the moment. And again, you're obviously going to feel your legs a lot, but you might feel these deep internal muscles right in the lower belly switching on. And you might feel your lower back opening. One more deep breath. And then you can just bring your hands behind you if you're at the wall and just push to bring yourself back up to that block squeezing Tadasana, or if you're in the room, in the center of the room, just come up and then release the block again. Okay. So we're working towards some back bending, so we will just do a little bit more opening now and open the front of the hips. So we'll vinyasa back down, but even though we've not got the block this time, just again, have that energetic sense of adduction and just notice how it affects your practice, affects your feeling of strength and stability. So when you're ready, standing at the front of the mat, inhale, raise the hands, look up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, look up. And then this time just step your left foot back and bring the left knee down, coming into our Anjaneyasana, crescent moon lunge. Inhale, raise the hands. So even here, we can have a sense of adduction. So the thighs aren't next to each other, but we can still have this sense of drawing everything to the center line. We can drop the tailbone and try and feel our deep core, the lowest portion of the belly muscles. So even though it's a very big opening, we also feel our structural integrity here. One more breath. Exhale, release the hands down. Come into half Hamonasana. So bring the hips back, come onto the heel of the right foot, walk the hands back and fold over the front shin. If you can't reach the floor with the hands, if you have two blocks, put them on blocks, or you can put the hands on the shin, but you'll just feel a little bit less stable. Try to activate the foot to really get the stretch into the lower calf. Again, you could feel like you're squeezing a block between the thighs. What tends to happen in this posture is the hips swing out to the left a little bit. See if you can bring the left hip so it's right above the left knee and squeeze that imaginary block. And it will feel different. Might not feel as deep a stretch, but just know that you're stretching from structural integrity. I'm learning in my later life how important this is. Bring the hands down, tuck the back toe under, and then up to you. You can just come straight back to downward dog or take a child's pose, squeezing the imaginary block, or you could do a whole vinyasa, feeling again like you're squeezing the block, but now it's not there. Just try and keep your focus there as best you can. And returning to downward dog, take a breath, adduct energetically. And then when you're ready, take the left foot forward between the hands, bring the right knee down, come onto the top of the right foot, sink the hips. Inhale, raise the hands, Anjaneyasana. Looking up to the hands, if available, or forward. And especially if you're very bendy, you need to be more careful of this. This is what's happened to me, being so flexible. I've not paid enough attention to this. So now I am feeling like we're squeezing the inner thighs towards each other, dropping the tailbone, connecting to deep core, even in these big open postures. Even if it means we don't go into our deepest stretch, we don't need to. Exhale, release the hands down, come onto the heel, take the hips back, fold over the front shin. And again, just watch your hips. The right hip's probably swung out to the right. Bring it back so it's above the right knee. Imagine you've got a block between the thighs, even though it's not really possible, but just have that energetic sense. And this is going to help you stabilize the pelvis. One more deep breath. And then coming back onto the sole of the foot, plant the hands again, your choice, child's pose, downward dog, or scoot the left leg back, find that really adduction focused vinyasa if you wish. Moving with the breath. Coming back to downward dog. Okay, from here, we're going to come back to plank for a moment. Bring the knees down if you need, or come onto the elbows if you need. Just take another couple of breaths here. And this time I'm going to challenge you. You might need to come onto the knees and lift one leg, but we're going to see if we can lift the left leg. Just hover it above the floor, internally rotate without lifting the hips and lower. Lift the right leg without tilting the pelvis or lifting the hips and lower. And then we're going to come down to the floor, onto our belly. So use the knees if you wish, or come down by chaturanga, squeezing the imaginary block. Come down and just come straight into the Sphinx here. So we're on the elbows, elbows underneath the shoulders. And stretch the belly for a moment, drawing the shoulder blades down, the spine and together, opening the chest, pulling the floor towards you to stretch the lower belly, these deep muscles we've been working, just giving them a little bit of a release here. Okay, and then slowly come down. Hopefully your block is still handy. We're going to have a go at locust with the block. So slide the block between your thighs again. Come to the nearer mat. So kind of it's a little bit awkward, reach it behind you, hopefully it's possible, and squeeze it somewhere above the knees. Okay, and just have your hands by your side. We're just going to do classic locust, but with adducting. As you adduct, try not to let the soles of the feet close towards each other. Try and keep them open to the ceiling. So when you're ready, we're going to inhale, lift the chest and the feet, and see if you can also with the block. It might not be possible. And try not to let the soles of the feet close towards each other. Squeeze that block. And maybe if this posture always cramps in the lower back, maybe you feel slightly less cramping with this action that we're focusing on, maybe not, but just notice. And exhale, come down. So it might not feel as deeper Shalabhasana as usual because we've got the awkwardness of the block, but it gives us this feedback. Just turn a head to the side, just take a couple of resting breaths. So we're going to repeat that. You can do the same arm position. If you want to try a different position, you could try the cactus arms or even out in front of you. Okay, so either back behind you, out to the side or cactus, or in front. Each one's a bit more difficult. So easiest is the same as what we did before. So inhale, lift everything up. You want a bit more of a challenge, cactus arms. You want even more of a challenge, stretch the arms forward, but squeeze the block and try not to let the soles of the feet close in towards each other. Try and let the soles of the feet point up towards the ceiling. Keep squeezing. One more breath. And exhale, release. Come down, turn the other cheek to the floor. Let the shoulders relax. Let the thighs relax, kind of flop where they want to flop to for a moment here. Okay, and then we can lose the block. So you might just want to push yourself up and then take the block out. Probably a bit easier to bring it out from the front. And we're going to come to Vajrasana, which is just kneeling. So we're going to sit our hips on our heels and just have your hands on your thighs. So we're just going to neutralize the spine after that back bending, drawing the shoulder blades back and down. And just here, just play with pelvic tilts. So it's like we're cat-cowing, but really focusing on this pelvic area. So kind of drawing the pelvis back and then drawing it underneath. And this in itself is going to help ease the lower back. But when we're working a lot with structural integrity, it's also good to work with the movement and free up this area as well, because it's always that balance. And then try to settle in what feels like the neutral pelvis. If you imagined your pelvic bowl as holding water, it wouldn't be tipping water out the back by having it too far forward, and it wouldn't be tipping water out the front. Level, neutral. And then you can stay here in Vajrasana, but if anybody wants to come into a more internal rotation of the thighs, we could try Virasana. So this is where we have the knees together, but we take the feet a bit wider and we sit down between the heels now. possibly one block or two blocks. But what this is doing is really internally rotating the thighs. So if you have a look at my feet in Vajrasana, the soles of the feet are pointing straight up. That's important, not out to the side. So if you can't find the floor, sit on one or two blocks, or just stay in Vajrasana, because that is doing a little bit of fine internal rotation. So we'll just stay here for a moment just to settle in. So these internal rotation ones are really good if you're somebody who's very bendy, very open, naturally in the hips. Like me, for example, I need to do a lot of these to balance, okay? If you struggle, then you need to do more of those. But just today, we're focusing on this aspect of the practice. So from here, we can start to go back, or you stay where you are. If this is already enough, and if your knees are coming off the floor in any way, come to Vajrasana, and certainly don't go any further. But if your knees are down and together, or more or less together, and you feel okay, you can start to explore what it's like to come back onto the hands and lift the chest. Maybe bring the fingertips forward to the toes and come down onto the elbows. If the knees pop up at this point, it's too far, come back up. If you're on blocks, one or two, the furthest back you're going to go is here on the hands. You won't, it's too much to go further if you're on blocks. For those who are very comfortable here, full Supta Virasana, you're going to lie down on your back and reach the arms overhead. But you're really focusing on internally rotating the thighs, whichever posture you've chosen here or whichever stage you're at. You're trying to keep the knees glued together and down. Even if you're in Vajrasana, you're still focusing on that if you're kneeling. Keep the inner thighs glued together and even pressing against each other like this adduction. That's what we're focusing on. One more deep breath wherever you are. And then if you're all the way back, come back up in stages, come onto the elbows, climb onto the hands, come all the way up, everybody arrive back. Okay, great. And then we're going to come forward again, and we're going to have a go. We won't use the block, but we want to really focus on keeping the pelvis stable. So just come down onto your elbows from kneeling. So your elbows are underneath your shoulders. Some of you might know where we're going from here. Evil cackle from me. Elbows under the shoulders, interlace the hands, and then we're going to stretch the legs out behind us and come into the dolphin plank, or the forearm plank. So shoulders above elbows. Try not to stick the bum in the air. If you need to, it's okay, but if possible, bring it in line. Draw the tailbone under, firm the thighs, squeeze that invisible block, lift the lower belly up towards the spine and press down actively through elbows, forearms and wrists. So we open up the upper back. Breathe as fully as you can. If you need to come down, bring the knees down, otherwise a couple more breaths if you can. And then at the end of your next exhale, just bring the knees down. Come into a sphinx for a moment, just stretching that belly. We've got two more variations of this. If at any point you've had enough, just stay in the sphinx or take rest on the belly. Okay, listen to your body. But otherwise, we're going to try two more things. Okay, so coming back to interlacing the hands, elbows under the shoulders. Again, tuck the toes, lift the body up, back into the forearm plank. Okay, so this time, just like we did in the real plank, just lift up one foot for a moment, lower it, lift the other, lower it. We need to come down too, but otherwise, roll onto the little toe edge of the left foot, but don't let the hips and thighs and knees come down. Come back to the center, roll onto the little toe edge of the right foot, come back to the center. Do one more each side if you can. Try not to lift the hips too much. We're working the obliques now, another important part of the core. And then come back down, refine the sphinx, elbows under the shoulders. Breathe into the front body, or if you prefer, just take that rest. Okay, so again, there's one more. If you know you've had enough, just take this one out, sit this one out. Otherwise, this is a corker. Okay, so once again, interlace. Oh no, in this one we don't interlace the hands. We just stay elbows under the shoulders and the forearms parallel. And we tuck the toes, we lift the hips, we lift the knees, and come into the dolphin plank. And then from here, we take the right hand back, so it's underneath the right shoulder. We press through the right hand, and then we bring the left hand back, so it's underneath the left shoulder. Then we come back down, we bring the left elbow down underneath the left shoulder, right elbow down under the shoulder. We return to dolphin plank. Then we do it the other way. Bring the left hand back under the left shoulder, press through it, bring the right hand back under the right shoulder. Right elbow down underneath the shoulder, left elbow down underneath the shoulder, and rest. Okay, so that one, the focus, when we first start to do that, if it's your first time, probably the pelvis is rocking side to side. So over time, you can be doing this up and down, and really putting your focus in not moving the pelvis. So if anybody wants to have one more go at that one and really focus on not letting the pelvis move side to side, you're welcome. Otherwise, take rest. So I'll guide you through it if anybody wants to do that. And then I promise that's it. Okay, so tuck the toes under, lift yourself up. Right hand comes back, press, left hand comes back. Focus on your pelvis. Left elbow down, right elbow down. Now left hand back, press, right hand back, focus on the pelvis. Right elbow down, left elbow down, and release. Sphinx for a moment, just to open up the belly. And then exhale, just take a little rest here for a moment. Well done. And then slowly coming up. So we're just going to do one more, come to kneel, one more kind of hamstring opener, and then we'll come into back bendings and then cool down. So we're going to try Triangle Mukha Eka Pada Paschimottanasana, which is one of the best Sanskrit names ever. But it means 3 limbs facing the foot. So we're going to stretch the left leg forward. This isn't going to be for everyone. It depends on your knees. If you've got knee issues, I'll give you an alternative. But if possible, if it's okay for your knees, it's a bit like it's like a half Virasana that we were just doing. You're going to fold your right leg, bend it at the knee, and bring your right heel to the outside of the right hip, again with the sole of the foot up. And again, at this point, you might need to sit yourself up on a block. Okay. So if that doesn't work for you, if the knee's high or it's just really painful, or sometimes it's really painful on people's feet, then take Janu Shirshasana. And this is one of the only abduction postures we're doing today, where we're kind of coming away from the center line like that. Okay, so no problem if you need to do that. Otherwise, again, we're internally rotating the right thigh to try and keep it next to the left knee. And then whichever leg position you're in, inhale, reach up. Then exhale, hinge at the hips, bring the hands down to whatever they find. Inhale, lengthen. And then it's 3 limbs pointing towards the foot, 2 arms, and your right knee are all pointing towards your left foot. So that's kind of where we're going here. So just gaze at your left foot, take some breaths. Try to focus on this structural stability of the pelvis. Maybe really work with your bandhas or your deep core, drawing up on the pelvic floor, drawing the lower portion of the belly muscles back towards the spine. And breathe deep, keeping our internal awareness, really listening to our body's feedback, pratyahara. We're not worried about what's happening outside, just inside our bodies, inside our minds. And at the end of the next exhale, coming up, lean to the left to come out of this. If you're in the full posture, maybe I like to give my knee a bit of a rub. It often feels a bit compressed, well, it has been compressed. And then on the other side again, you've got the choice, the abduction choice of Janu Shirshasana, sole of the foot to the inner thigh. Otherwise, you're bending the left knee. I like to roll my calf muscle out of the way. And your left heel is to the outside of your left hip, sole of the foot pointing up. Stabilize as best you can. There is sit on a block if you need. There's a tendency, I should have said it on the other side, to lean out to the side of the long leg, straight leg. So you can use your hands out to the side if coming forward doesn't work for you, to stay central, because we really want to focus on keeping as level in the pelvis as possible. Inhale, lift up if you can, or keep the hands on the floor. And then exhale, take the hands forward, so 3 limb space foot, or you can keep the hands out to the side, so you've got like stabilizers, and kind of press through whichever hand you need to press through to feel like you're in the center with your balance. Your center of gravity is your spine, is your tailbone. That's what we're looking for here. When we get very connected to our deep core muscles, we can actually use this connection to help us stabilize as well. So it's possible to kind of contract the left side of the deep transverse abdominals to draw us to the left, and vice versa. But you may not be able to connect with that subtlety yet, but just know that's possible, and connect as best you can to your deep transverse abdominals, drawing those lower belly muscles back and lifting on the pelvic floor. One more deep breath here. And then inhale, coming up. Lean to the right, bend the left knee if you're in Triangle Mukha, massage the knee. Okay, so we're going to do 2 types of back bends today, and we're going to work with our friend the block, at least for the first round, and then maybe with the kind of imaginary block for the second round. I'll move through that. Okay, so we're starting with the camel, Ustrasana. If you need to fold your mat in half, if it's painful for your knees, do so. So you've got double padding. And bring the block between the thighs. So again, your knees are going to be closer together than normal. Your feet might even be touching. And this is fine, but fine. This posture is actually very traditionally done with the knees together, which is much harder. Okay, so just in this high kneel, squeeze the block. Just again, reconnect to that adduction, feeling it help you ground as well. When we adduct, we kind of can feel a sense of that downward grounding, apanic energy, and then the rebound of energy up the spine. Bring the hands onto the hips, so thumbs either side of the sacrum, fingertips round towards the hip bone, and then roll the shoulders back, squeeze that beach ball between the elbows behind you. Inhale, lift up, extend through the spine, and as you exhale, just push the hips forward slightly with the hands, squeeze the block like you haven't squeezed it yet, and feel the spine extend away from the tailbone or from the pelvis, grounding down through the tops of the feet and the knees. Notice how squeezing the block might help you feel more grounded. Lift the space behind the heart, lift the chin slightly, breathe fully, and then inhale, coming back. Take a moment, and we're going to do one more, and it's up to you. You could do 2 things. You could come back to kind of normal width legs, like hip distance, and do the imaginary squeezing of the block. You could just squeeze the block again, or you could try that kind of very classic version of this posture with the thighs together and the feet together. So from the front, there's no gap at all between the thighs. This, when I was in India, I had a very traditional teacher, and he taught me this posture this way. I was like, wow, this is much harder. So up to you, any of those 3 options, and then just the same again. We'll do it 3 times, then the third one you can do camel. So squeeze the block, squeeze the imaginary block, or squeeze the inner thighs towards each other. Push the hips forward, squeeze the beach ball and between the elbows behind you. Ground down, feel how squeezing the inner thighs helps ground. Lift the space behind the heart, breathe fully, and then inhale, come up. If that's enough for you, just come down to Vajrasana, neutral spine, pause here till we catch up with you. Or number 3, I'm not going to do it because I'm just still guarding my back a bit, but if you know Ustrasana, feet, hands to feet, take it, or we just keep doing this preparatory one, and maybe try one of the other options, like knees hip distance, squeezing the imaginary block, squeeze the block, these together. And again, just one last time, if you've got the juice for it, really focusing on the thighs today, knowing that when we focus on the thighs like this, that work is trickling through the whole deep core structure, psoas, deep transverse abdominals mainly, and helping free the sacrum. Like we work the front body to help alleviate and open the back body. And then when you're done, come up, leading with the hips, head follows, and come down, hips onto heels. So just take a moment with a neutral spine, dropping the tailbone. Just let that settle. You could even be squeezing your thighs together here if you're not bored of that yet. Okay, and then we're going to come down onto our backs. We'll do one more back bend and then we'll kind of cool down. Yes, we'll do the back bend and then we'll come back up to seated because I want to do one more seated posture with you. But let's just do the back bending part as a complete section. So we're going to come down onto our backs with our block. And we're going to do Setu Bandhasana, possibly even the wheel, if you're feeling it, with the block. But I mean, I would recommend Setu Bandhasana at least to begin with. So we slide the block between the thighs, heels are close to the buttocks, and again, they're going to be a little bit closer than hip distance today. Squeeze the block. And we'll just start by doing 5 pulses. So if you inhale, just lift the hips, you can squeeze the block. You're not going to get very high, and exhale lower just so the buttocks skim the floor. Just do that 4 more times. Inhaling, lifting and squeezing, exhaling, lowering and squeezing. Really paying attention to your lower belly as you do this. So just notice you can't go into your fullest opening yet because we've got the block. And when you come down for the 5th time, just let the buttocks come down and release the block. And this time we're going to come up into full Setu Bandhasana and feel like we're still squeezing the block. Okay, so heels can be hip distance apart now. Try to get the outer edges of the feet parallel if possible. Heels out, toes in for most of us. Press down through feet and hands, lift the hips. So now you can come all the way up to your highest expression of the posture, rolling the shoulders underneath you, but then put your awareness in your thighs again and feel like there's still a block there that you're squeezing. Trying to keep the knees tracking with the hips. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze that imaginary block. And try to relax the upper portion of the buttocks as you do that to help open the sacral area. You can even bend the elbows and press down through the upper arms and the elbows with the fingertips pointing up to help get this kind of lifting feeling and adducting feeling. And then slowly lower everything down. Just shrug the shoulders back so the whole of the skin's on the floor. Maybe take the feet forward slightly. And you can just stay here and take a bit more rest. Otherwise, if anybody wants to do one more back bend and maybe you want to explore this theme with a deeper back bend, maybe coming onto the crown of the head, maybe I'm not going to do it because of my back, but into the wheel, but still with this focus on the inner thighs. Okay, so kind of freestyle final back bend with thigh focus, or you're just taking some nice resting breaths on the floor if you know you've had enough. Squeeze that imaginary block. Try not to let the heels turn in, toes turn out. So we're still internally rotating the thighs as well, the legs. Breathe fully, always the key, especially in big back bends, big opening postures. Breathe fully. And then when you're cooked, just slowly come down from upper back to lower back. And again, shrug the shoulders back, take the feet forwards, make sure the whole of the skins of the back's on the floor. And our cool down, we're going to just still work with this internal rotation. So just take the legs up to the ceiling for a moment and take the arms up as well. And see if you can find the place where the joints are stacked. So it's like wrists, elbows and shoulders are stacked, ankles, knees and hips are stacked. And sometimes if you find it, it feels like effortless. It feels like you're kind of hanging. I don't quite understand how that, but there's a sense of it being effortless. And then from here, cross your left arm in front of your right and just kind of take the hands over to the opposite shoulder. So your elbows are kind of pointing up towards the ceiling. Left arm is closer to you than the right arm. And then do the opposite with the leg. So cross your right thigh in front of the left thigh, and then just drop the feet so the knees are pointing up towards the ceiling. So you've got knees and elbows pointing up, and everything's kind of internally rotating. You can just stay here, or we can take Gormakasana on our back. So if you wish, you can lift up the feet and see if you can reach forward. You might need to bring the head off the floor to find it. Reach forward to hold the little toe edges of your feet with your hands. And then the head comes back down or onto a block. And rather than letting the feet drop, we now push the feet up into the hands and use the hands to kind of pull the feet away from each other. And at the same time, we're pressing the sacrum down into the floor. This isn't going to work for everyone. So if you can't find that grip at all, don't worry, just stay with the kind of thighs tightly crossing and the feet dropping, and just with the elbows pointing out. You're getting the same internal rotation benefits, structural integrity of the pelvis. But those who can take Gormakasana, just get an extra hip opener. One more breath. And then release whatever posture you come to. Come back to that kind of, I don't know what to call it, hanging upside down, but not upside down, and stacking the joints. And then we'll just do that the other side. So now cross your right arm in front of your left, and just kind of as far up the arm as possible. We just let the hands drop to the opposite shoulder, elbows pointing up. And then again, left, opposite with the leg. So left thigh on top of right. Again, cross as high up the thighs as possible, and then just let the feet drop. So you've got knees pointing out, elbows pointing up. It's really opening up the lower back and the upper back here. Stay here, or unravel the arms, probably lift the head to find the grip, and then bring the head back down. So you're holding the little toe edges of the feet, and then you're pressing the tops of the feet up into the hands and pulling the feet away from each other. So eventually the shins are kind of parallel to the floor. And we're actually not in Gormakasana, we're in a different posture. It's called double pigeon, but on our backs. And then we're pressing the sacrum down into the mat at the same time to elongate the spine to its neutral curves. You might need to put the head on a block. One more deep breath wherever you're at. And then the end of the exhale coming out. Just if you wish to come back to that upside down hanging that's not upside down one more time. I just really like this. And then just let everything come down and come to constructive rest position, still internally rotating, and let the inner knees touch. So if the inner knees don't touch, put that block between the knees now, so you get that feedback between the knees, and just rest the hands on the lower belly and just breathe into the space beneath your hands. Just really relax the belly. Without knowing it, or we might have been very aware of it, but we've really been working the lowest portion of the deep transverse abdominals, where they kind of join or meet the pubic bone, like really far down. So we're just totally relaxing that area now. The thighs are relaxed if the knees are touching each other or touching the block. So we're just resting all those muscles we've been really working on. And got a couple of minutes for an inversion. So you could take your legs up the wall if you're very close to the wall. You could slide your block, because we've all got a block today, underneath the sacrum and take the Pariti Karani in the center of the room, just lifting the legs up to the ceiling. Or if you're feeling that more dynamic inversion, and take a shoulder stand or a headstand and work with the adduction and feel it as a way of feeling like this lift up through the limbs. So you don't need to use a block, but say it was shoulder stand, like I'm just demonstrating here. Once I'm up, it's like I'm squeezing the thighs together. I'm feeling that, like we were exploring how it helps us ground, we can also explore how it helps us extend up, because actually the two things are directly connected. We ground down to extend up. So now we're inverted, we can focus more on the extending up feeling that happens even more when we focus on this drawing to the midline. So call it adduction, call it drawing to the midline, whatever you want to call it, but feel it as an energetic sense of upward lift. now. Let the breath be nice and steady, whichever posture you've chosen. Even if your leg's up the wall, you can still be focusing on this adduction or Viparita Karani. Great, and when you feel like you've done at least 10 breaths, you can stay a little bit longer if you want, but when you feel ready to come down, just come down with control, using your deep core awareness that we've been connecting to. If you've been in shoulders down, some of you have, take a little fish, doesn't need to be for long, but just bring the hands to the buttocks or outer hips, elbows close in, lift the space behind the heart and drop the head back. And breathe into the throat. A couple of breaths. I don't think anyone did headstand, but if anyone did headstand, take a child's pose. And then slowly to come out, walk the elbows out, bring the back down onto the floor. Just take a moment and tune into your body. Is there anything your body needs? Maybe after all this adduction, you'd like to just do a Supta Baddha Konasana, which is total opposite, just letting them flop out, letting the legs flop out to the side, soles of the feet together, but abduction. Or you might just want to do a little cross twist each side, followed by a happy baby, symmetrical posture. So just giving you a bit of time in these last few minutes, either cross twist and happy baby or knees to chest, or a few moments of Supta Baddha Konasana. Happy baby is also abduction, so that will also do the opposite for you. And just in your own time, just make your way to Shavasana. And you've done your closing stretches, just tuning into your body. Come to Shavasana and let this be a true Shavasana where we let go of all adduction now. We just let it go. So the feet are slightly wider than the hips and the feet flop out to the side now. We abduct actually, but really we just relax, and our body in its natural way of relaxing tends to be abduction, tends to be externally rotated. The arms are away from the side and the palms are up, which is also abduction in the arms. So it's quite interesting that in this final integrating posture, we come to complete relaxation, which is actually the opposite of adduction. So it just shows that adduction is part of this core stability, which requires a bit of effort, and that yoga, one of the definitions of the asana in yoga is that it's a balance between effort and ease, sthira and sukha. Sthira is effort, sukha is ease. So today we've really focused on sthira, the effort. So of course we balance that at the end with total ease, letting go, no effort. So you're lying down, feet flopping out to the side, arms away from the side, palms up, and we relax. Let go of all the sthira that we've been doing. And come into sukha. So in a well-balanced class, we do both. So make sure, because we've been particularly focusing on sthira, that you utterly let go here so that we have a well-balanced class. Feel your spine as the plumb line through your body, the center line from which your limbs now drop away. Feel it centrally aligned. reached the end of our time together, more or less, but I am aware that maybe for balance today, you need a longer Shavasana. I would quite understand that after all that effort. So by all means, stay exactly where you are for as long as time you have or feel you need. But if you feel ready to close with me, you feel balanced in yourself, just gently, gradually start to deepen the breath. Move the fingers and the toes. Take a stretch if you need. Just gradually find your way back to seated. And let's just close in the same way we started, just really coming into our center just one last time. So just bring the palms together at the center. It's like we're drawing into the center line with this mudra at the heart center, and just bow your head to your hands. So we're like drawing everything in to our center line here, to our heart center. And just cement this great work just by coming right into your center, your internal center, and just residing there for one last moment before we re-enter the world. Just feeling that felt sense of your internal landscape, giving it acknowledgement, deep gratitude for all it does, keeping you stable, safe, strong. Feel ready, just opening the eyes, lifting the head again. Thank you for practicing. Hope you enjoyed, and see you soon.